This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remus.
What's going on, everyone? Hope you had a great long weekend. Welcome to a big Monday edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. We have a big one tonight at Canada Life Center as the final 6 games of the season will determine who's going to the playoffs and who is on the outside looking in. Jets still technically alive, but needless to say, need to win often and maybe just straight up run the table if they want to be in the playoffs. Big win on Saturday night for the team against the Columbus Blue Jackets, coming off a pretty humbling loss in Dallas on Thursday. We'll get to that in just a minute when Connor Hrabchak jumps on the program with me. And then we'll tee up tonight. It is an Amazon Prime game. It is 6:30 p.m. tonight, half an hour earlier than normal. So you make sure if you're going to the game, you get down there early. Adnan Verk is going to jump on with us for a few minutes. We'll tee up tonight, get his thoughts on the crazy playoff races in the National Hockey League. And then Jeff Hamilton a little bit later on as well with the latest on the Jets as they go into their final half dozen games with their playoff hopes on life support. Jake Boland-Moss a little later on. We got to tee up this NCAA championship game tonight and tomorrow's Masters preview on WST. I think what we're going to do is get that in the can and run that immediately after Winnipeg Sports Talk tomorrow. So we got a busy day tomorrow with not just the regular show, but also our WST Winners Masters preview with their favorite picks and bets for the tournament, which gets underway on Thursday. We've got a lot to get to, so welcome to everyone listening on the podcast. Shout out to all of you that have joined us live on YouTube. Hit that thumbs up button and make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you haven't already. And a big thanks to all the sponsors that make the show happen each and every day. Of course, our partners at CoolBet. We will hit the CoolBet lines later on and remind you all that Wednesday night is the return of the WST Poker Open. We'll get going at 8 o'clock p.m. We'll have information on our socials, but it's over at coolbet.com. You go to tournaments. Once you go into the poker, you go into tournaments and just search WST. We will see you at 8 o'clock. Remo away, but there will be a $100 bounty on my head and on the head of one Jeff Hamilton. Also want to thank Princess Auto, Chud's Power Sports, Clean Line, Plumbing, Heating, and Electrical, Uptown Alley, Rollies Transfer, St. Vital Dental Center, as well as Manitoba Battery, Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge, our friends at Breezy Bend. Speaking of golf season, Royal Sports, Boston Pizza, Little Brown Jug, Manitoba Building Trades, and the Manitoba Federation of Labor. And we will get to a why not question of the day for Not Autocorp over at Waverly and McGillivray. Let's welcome in Connor Hrabchak to the program, who had a fun episode of WST Sunday Live on Sunday. What's going on, my man? How are you?
I'm doing great, Huss. I hope you and everyone in the chat had a great Easter weekend. I know I did. Jets hockey on Saturday. We won't talk about baseball and the Blue Jays, but the Final Four was awesome. I mean, the Michigan game was a blowout, but hoping for a good final tonight. And there's a lot happening around the NHL tonight. Obviously, Jets Kraken, that's in our very own backyard. Kings Preds, last time those two teams played a couple nights ago was a very spirited affair. Sharks are playing the Hawks at home. And then how about this, Huss? Sabres Lightning, the rematch of that insane game a couple weeks ago. Stanley and Shen both confirmed in the lineup tonight. I think I know why. So lots happening around the NHL tonight, but of course our focus is going to be on the Winnipeg Jets, and I'm fired up to be here all week chopping it up with you.
Yeah, I will admit I am a little choked that this game is Monday and not Tuesday, because I would have been posted up in the cockpit ready for Sabres Lightning if I wasn't going to be at Canada Life Center tonight. But that'll be something we'll pay attention to. There are 4 games tonight in the NHL. Both Buffalo and Tampa are confirmed for the playoffs. Tampa can pretty much, I think, ice the division and set up a Buffalo-Montreal old school Adams division matchup in the first round of the playoffs. That will be so fun. If it's Buffalo, Montreal, those two buildings will be better than probably everywhere else in the playoffs, to be honest, to get going, especially in that first round. So that's a big one tonight. Blackhawks and Sharks. Sharks need a win. They're 2 back with the game in hand, 1 point ahead of the Winnipeg Jets. And then what will assuredly be a 3-point game, the Nashville Predators and the Los Angeles Kings at the end of the day. But the game between the Jets and Kraken will feature Philip Grubauer and Connor Hrabchak. By the way, I'm just looking at Money Puck source at Connor Hrabchak 1. You are the source on
not a
on the
trustworthy
starting
source.
netminder
Don't
on
trust
Money
him.
Puck. And I mean, I can say this is a must-win game, but don't take my word for it. Take it from Money Puck. The Kraken, with their fade over the last week and a half, they're done. If they win this game, they would move up to 1.3%. But as Money Puck said, this is a literal must-win game for the Winnipeg Jets. If they beat the Kraken in regulation, they'll keep their playoff hopes alive and move up to 9.7%. If they lose to the Kraken tonight, in regulation, it goes to 1.5%. If they lose to the Kraken in OT, it ends up being 4%. So pretty clear the job for the Winnipeg Jets tonight. And to be honest, Connor, when you look at Nashville and LA playing each other tonight, the schedule, especially for the Kings the rest of the way, with 2 more against the Canucks, 1 game against the Calgary Flames, this team, I think, has to run the table to have a chance. Like, that actually still might not be enough. And that's part of the predicament that they put themselves in through the first 76 games of the season.
Yeah, Huss, like going into the weekend, we were talking, and I know you were talking with Mike McIntyre. He said, oh, maybe they could lose one. And you were thinking, no way. Like, you can't afford losses right now. Well, they lost one, meaning even an overtime loss at any stage probably is curtains, right? So that's going to be interesting to see. Adam, if you can, bring up that graphic I sent you of the West wildcard standings, because, Huss, there's a new team that's ahead of the Jets. The St. Louis Blues went into Colorado last night and picked up a regulation win. They're ahead of the Jets because they have that tiebreaker in regulation wins. Both teams are 33, 31, and 12 with 78 points in 76 games played. But like I said, Blues up there in regulation wins. They've been one of the best teams in the league since the Olympic break. So not only do the Jets have, tiebreakers to worry about, points to worry about, they now have 4 different teams to worry about in the Blues, Sharks, Kings, and the Preds. And as you mentioned, Preds, Kings tonight. The Kings get the Canucks 2 more times in their schedule. Pretty sure the Preds and the Sharks each play the Flames. Like, there are some pillow soft schedules ahead of the Winnipeg Jets here. So yeah, we are in must win, have to run the table territory for this Jets team.
Yeah, and the Jets do not have that luxury. After the Kraken tonight, they'll go head to head with the Blues. That's why the Blues, I mean, to be honest, that game on Thursday's probably going to mean more on the other end of the standings. Because, I mean, the most likely scenario in this is that it is, 90% chance that it's Nashville, LA, or San Jose that are going to be in that final playoff spot, which, of course, means that the loser of that game could be the winner as far as being ahead. And listen, at this point, I know people are paying attention to, it's only 3 points of the wild card spot, but you have to be cognizant of the fact that the high likelihood is that they won't make the playoffs. And then the story is, okay, where are they at in the draft lottery? And that's the thing that did not go well on the weekend. With the Jets win over the Columbus Blue Jackets, they actually ended up jumping the Panthers, the Leafs, and extending their lead to 3 points ahead of the Kraken. Now, the Blues, with their win last night against the Avs, actually jumped back over the Winnipeg Jets. So the Jets right now are in the 8 hole. But for Winnipeg, and listen, we know there's a lot of pride in that room. You were down at the skate today. They have been to the playoffs a number of times. They do not want to be the team that goes from the President's Trophy to missing it.
Right.
They'll be locked in tonight to try to get a win and just keep themselves alive. But the Jets' schedule the rest of the way is difficult. You've got this game against Seattle, on the road at the Blues, who have been really, really good. They're 8-2 or 6-2-2 in their last. But if you look at it, over the course, basically since the Olympic break, they've been one of the better teams in the National Hockey League, which has got them to where they are. You've got the Philadelphia Flyers, who, believe this or not, wake up this morning after their win yesterday in OT, third place in their division at 90 points, 1 point ahead of the Islanders and 2 points ahead of Bones and the Columbus Blue Jackets, who have lost 6 in a row right now. And the Ottawa Senators, with their win yesterday, maintain their spot in that second wild card. So it is crazy when we're talking about the battle for the second wild card in the West. The jockeying in the East is something like I can't remember a crazy, it's just bananas 2 weeks of games like this. Now with Philadelphia and Ottawa in the spots, who both had big time area to catch up. And then, of course, for a lot of other teams, who's ahead of who? How are things shaking out? Now, of course, a lot of this has to do with the game on Saturday. And I will admit, I was somewhat torn watching this game, knowing that with that loss against Dallas, it was going to take a lot of good fortune and a lot of wins that just haven't been there consistently all season long for this team to make us get the whites out. But I'll tell you what, it was a pretty fun game to watch as far as, it didn't seem like there were a ton of scoring chances, Connor. And I asked this, maybe you guys talked about this and we found this out. Was that the shortest game in duration in Jets 2.0 history? Was that the shortest game of the year? When was the last? That game went by in an instant. If people were missing it, they dropped the puck at 12:10 of the first period. There were no more whistles.
Yeah.
They missed all the TV timeouts. They got it to the break. There was still long. I think they may have started for the first 4 or 5 minutes of the second period playing straight as well, to be perfectly honest. The game ended in about 2 hours and 9 minutes. And to put it into perspective how fast this game was, I was at the bar watching, the Jets, and we had all the TVs on the Jet game. But as soon as the Jets was over, they threw the Habs game on. They threw the Leaf game on. The Habs game had like 9 minutes, 10 minutes left in it. And I think the Leaf game had like 14 minutes. And that game obviously ended up 7-6. But it was kind of a bizarre game, to be honest with you, in a bunch of ways. But she would agree, there was the fingerprints of Scott Arneal and his mentor Bones all over that one.
100%. What has been the hallmark of Winnipeg Jets hockey with Bones and Arneal behind the bench? Defensive, shut down, protect the middle of the ice. No wonder there were no whistles, because there were no shots. There were no zone entries. There was nothing. There was nothing happening. And then Kyle Connor makes 2 brilliant plays. Mark Scheifele hitting him for both. 2 nice goals. That gives the Winnipeg Jets the win. Connor Hrabchak has to make a big save with 5 seconds left. But Huss, that was the most bonus versus Arneal game I've ever seen. The shots on goal were like 18-8 halfway through the third. There was nothing happening at the offensive side for either team. And you look at the Blue Jackets. I know we're in Winnipeg. We're following our own wild card standings here. That was a massive game for the Blue Jackets, because you saw the Flyers win over the weekend. You saw the Senators win, and they're just behind now. And the Flyers have jumped them completely into the Metro third playoff spot. So yeah, that was quite the game, Huss. And in terms of the pace of it, I was watching, of course, and then Sportsnet just took the broadcast to the Leafs Kings game, and there was 14 and a half minutes left in the third. I'm like, what is going on here? Super fast game. And it's because there were no shots on goal. There were rarely any like offsides. So when there's no shots, goalies don't have to cover the puck. They don't have to go to a TV timeout, and they don't have to scrape the ice. And it just keeps on going. So yeah, That game was very, very fast, very low event, which I'm sure Bonus and Arneal both loved. And Adam Lowry, you heard him with Sean Reynolds before the game say, we hope Bonus is in a bad mood after. And with the players only meeting in Columbus, media waited a while. I don't think Bones was very happy with his team's performance.
Yeah, no. And listen, Bones had sort of aired them out earlier in the week. And listen, they didn't have it. Jets got the win that Columbus desperately needed. And both teams right now on the wrong side of the playoff line. As far as tonight goes, and we'll hear Adnan's going to join us in about 10 minutes or so. So we'll talk more about tonight's game, and then we'll hear from Scott Arneal, as well as a returning Nino Niederreiter and a returning Vlad Nemetsnikov to the lineup. Now, part of that is because Morgan Barron is out. I know we'll hear from the coach later on, but what did we learn today from when you were down at the rink about Barron's availability and, of course, Elias Salmonson, who we didn't see on Saturday either?
Yeah, so Scott Arneal told us down at the rink today, Morgan Barron week to week with a lower body injury. So obviously the first question was, well, Barron just came back from a concussion. Is it related? Scott Arneal says, no, it's a lower body new injury for Morgan Barron. He's week to week, so he's out. And Vlad Nemetsnikov and Nino Niederreiter, who have been wearing regular contact jerseys in practice for, I want to say, the last 3 or 4 days, they come back into the lineup. Scott Arneal was talking about how they'll need to get up to speed, and they could use that veteran presence and their skill sets right now, especially with Barron going out. Parker Ford comes out. And then on Elias Salomonsson, Arneal was asked if he has progressed at all, and he said he's still in concussion protocol and he's yet to start skating. But he did say that Salomonsson is feeling a little bit better today and continues to progress in that sense, but it hasn't resulted in him hitting the ice just yet. So that's really everything you need to know from the skate. Nyquist went from a regular contact jersey to a yellow non-contact. Colin Miller also still in a yellow non-contact, but Morgan Barron week to week, and Vlad and Nino are making their returns from pretty long absences.
Here's how things will work tonight. Let's check out the lines for our friends at Clean Line Plumbing, Heating, and Electrical. Your one-stop shop for Winnipeg and residential plumbing, heating, and electrical services. Don't forget, they've got you covered 24/7, 365 with 24/7 emergency services. 204-500-2001 is the number. So Scheifele, Connor, and Iafallo, Lowry between Perfetti and Velarde. Nino and Nemetsnikov will be skating with Brad Lambert, and Jonathan Taves in between Cole Koepke and Isaac Rosane. Morrissey, DeMello, Sandberg, Pionk, Fleury, Bryson, and Hellebuck is the starting goaltender tonight with the Jets. The Jets' playoff hopes on the line. They're your lines for our friends over at Clean Line Plumbing, Heating, and Electrical. Connor, as they say, we'll get more into the lineup and more on the Jets minutia coming out of Adnan before Jeff joins us. But very quickly, some huge news yesterday, Easter Sunday. And Pete DeBoer is back just in time to potentially get the Islanders off the mat into the playoffs. How about Patrick Waugh getting fired with 4 games left in the season?
That's insane. They've played 78 games this year, and now they're making the change. Like, I know the Islanders, they've been in a playoff spot really all year, and now they're starting to slide. So this is the time, right? And it makes more sense than Tortorella, in my opinion, because it's not just like Tortorella, they brought him in. It's for 8 games in the playoffs, and he doesn't have a contract beyond that. So Tortorella they could go find a new coach in the summer, right? DeBoer is at least the rest of this season and 4 more for the New York Islanders. So it's a long-term coaching play. It's not just for 4 regular season games and then maybe not even the playoffs for the New York Islanders if they don't win these games, right? So that's wild. And this new trend, Huss, I wonder if this is going to become a thing with kind of the false parity we see around the league where every game is a 3-point game these days, it feels like, and all these teams are in it. Will teams not be afraid to look for a coaching bump with 10 games left in the year? Is this going to be something we see years and years from now? I don't know. It's just so rare but we've seen it twice in the last 2 weeks where these teams that are in and around a playoff spot are making drastic coaching changes. I was not expecting to see that.
Well, it's a copycat league. And if the Vegas Golden Knights go to the Cup final or something like that, people will think about this. If DeBoer can save the Islanders season and get them into the playoffs and they can win a round, maybe. It's not the first time. We had seen the Devils seem to do this all the time. I mean, Lou Lamoriello fired his coach and went behind the bench himself at one point. We saw Larry Robinson take over late in the year and him actually win a cup. But it is a little bit strange. The thing with this Islander move is that it's not really just about right now.
Right.
I think Matthew Darche realized that Patrick Waugh was probably past his best before date with this group. And they were going to be probably getting a new coach at the end of this season anyways. So it does two things. Maybe it sparks things and you get Pete DeBoer in and you end up making the playoffs, which would be great. If you don't, what the Islanders have basically done is cut the line and get ahead of a bunch of other teams and get, because Pete DeBoer was coming back next year. I don't think there's any doubt. I mean, he had his fun, went to Italy for a couple of weeks before the Olympics and, coached in the Olympic Games and all that. He's ready to come back. So someone was going to be hiring him. They got their guy, and we'll see what happens with that. We'll talk more about this coming up in just a few minutes. Adnan Verk is going to join us coming up in just a sec. And when we do that, we'll kind of set up tonight's Amazon Prime game between the Winnipeg Jets and the Seattle Kraken, which, of course, is a 6:30 start down at Canada Life Center and available on Amazon Prime. But we'll get ready for Adnan Verk. First off, a big thanks to a few of our WST sponsors, and then more hockey talk as we get the week rolling on WST.
Hey, Bob, you hear the news?
I can't listen to the news, Daryl.
This is different.
Oh, it's so negative.
Not this time. Manitoba's got these new jobs agreements. And when the government builds things like new schools and hospitals, they'll hire Manitoba workers first.
Really?
Creating good jobs with union standards and more apprenticeships for Manitobans. And we'll get rid of those out-of-province license plates on job sites.
Keeping our money working for Manitobans, eh?
You betcha.
Well, that's how it should work.
I knew you'd like it.
A message from Manitoba's Building Trades and Federation of Labor.
Spring into good times at Uptown Alley and eat, drink, and play at the most fun spot in the city. You'll enjoy 5-pin bowling, 10-pin bowling, a state-of-the-art arcade, and good times playing laser tag as well. And in addition, Uptown Alley features incredible food and drink options at their bistro. Pop down to Uptown Alley with your group or make it a party. It's the best place in Winnipeg for birthday parties for kids, teens, or adults, and an amazing spot for corporate events where you just simply pick your activities, any of your add-ons, what you'd like to eat, and the Uptown Alley staff takes care of everything else. For more information, go to uptownalley.ca, book a lane at 488-0000, or pop down and see him at 1301 St. Matthews Avenue. Got a move coming up? Lean on our friends and longtime sponsors at Rolly's Transfer, the most trusted name in moving and storage in Manitoba. Now into their 7th decade with over 60 years of experience, family owned and operated. Head over to their website at rollys.com to find out all about their services serving Winnipeg and southern Manitoba. In the top right corner, you can click on Request an Estimate. Use the promo code WST for a special discount on moving services and moving supplies, and then simply let them know when you're moving, where you're moving to, and what needs to be moved. And the friendly staff at Rolly's will turn it around quickly and get you a great quote to get you locked in for the white glove treatment that they've been famous for now for over 60 years in Winnipeg. For all your moving needs, make it Rolly's Transfer, the most trusted name in the game. Find out more and request an estimate today on your next move at rollys.com. Has it been a minute since you've been to the dentist? If it is, our pal Dr. Terry and the wonderful staff at St. Vital Dental Center would love to see you. They've been taking care of generations of Winnipeggers and Manitobans in St. Vital for years, and have now moved into a beautiful new facility at 167 St. Anne's with state-of-the-art equipment and convenient free parking right behind the building. They'll handle customers and clients from 6 months to 99 plus with a full array of dental services, from cleanings and checkups to surgeries like dental implants. Dr. Terry and the gang can absolutely do it all. We'll do it with a smile on their face and make your smile look even better than it's ever been. Go to stvitaldental.ca online to make an appointment. Pop into St. Vital Dental, get that girl taken care of, and tell them the boys at Winnipeg Sports Talk sent you. All right, Adnan Verk's going to join us in just a couple minutes. We'll get Connor back in here in a minute. Connor, we didn't really touch on the Dallas game on Thursday night. Obviously, with Good Friday, there was no show, which may have been a good thing. I didn't really want to go into a long weekend talking about that one. To me, that was it's almost the worry of if this team can get into the playoffs, because there is a group of teams that are just simply at another level right now. And I think we saw it to an extent in that game. I mean, it wasn't like the Jets laid down or anything like that. I mean, they played hard, but I mean, you look at this Central Division right now, and the gap is real between those top three teams. And I know the Jets have had good results against the Colorado Avalanche as of late. I still do sort of feel like the Avs have been kind of waiting for the playoffs to start, albeit certainly not as dominant as they were in the first half of the season. I do have reservations about their chances of coming out of this division based on who they'll have to play. But that was if you really wanted to get people fired up and have people believing, that was a win that it sort of felt like the Jets had to have. And, credit to them for getting it back and, being able to win on Saturday. But we knew with 7 games left, the task at hand. And if you believe that they had an out, that out was used at its first opportunity on Thursday night against the Stars.
Yeah, that's a great point, Huss. If they had beat the Stars on Thursday night on the road, it would have been full steam ahead, right? Like, you just beat Colorado, then you go into Dallas and you win a game there. And it's like, okay, here we go. And obviously on that night, they lose. And then the out-of-town scoreboard's not kind to them, and the percentages are dropping. And now we're in this situation where it's must win the rest of the way, essentially, for this Winnipeg Jets team. But one of the bigger takeaways for me, Huss, and I don't know, this is more of an off-season topic, but you see a team like Dallas just play the way they did against the Winnipeg Jets. The Jets had 11 shots with 10 minutes to go and got a bunch at the end with the empty skater and all that stuff, or the empty net, excuse me. But how in the offseason are the Winnipeg Jets going to get back? Because Dallas is bringing everyone back. We had a conversation with Gavin Spittle the day of. They have 14-ish million in cap space, and really the only player they have to bring back is Jason Robertson. And he probably won't get 14 million. He'll slide in under that just a little bit. But this whole Dallas team is coming back. You look at Colorado's cap sheet, they're all coming back. Like, how are the Winnipeg Jets going to get back to competing? Because these teams aren't really going anywhere. And I know it was maybe too much to take away from one game, but as we look towards the offseason, that's going to be front of mind for me, is how are the Winnipeg Jets going to build their roster to compete against Dallas, who's bringing back that same team?
Speaking of Robertson, a reverse hit on Elias Salmonson knocked him out of the game and got him into the quiet room, the concussion protocol. As we said, he's not out of it yet, so we'll see whether he returns at any point this year. And listen, I mean, there's obviously some key guys, Scheifele, Connor, Hellebuck, Morrissey. I would argue that with his play so far, Elias Salmonson out of the lineup significantly hampers the Winnipeg Jets' ability to win hockey games. So it is tough. I have to admit, and I know you talked about this on Sunday Live, I loved the weekend for Neil Pionk. And
check.
We asked the question a couple weeks ago, with the loss of Stanley and Shen, who will certainly be fighting somebody tonight in the game against Tampa in Buffalo. Who's next up after Adam Lowry? If it goes down. And there wasn't a lot of really convincing arguments. Neil Pionk, though, was the guy. And, man, he gave one of his patented hip checks to Jason Robertson. Robertson, incredibly, Pionk looked like he was ready to fight him. I mean, giving up a lot of weight and a lot of height. Robertson didn't want any of it. And then some other guy jumped on him, and then it was Adam Lowry and Jamie Benn, a matchup that we've seen a few times before.
Yes.
But I'll say this, Pionk right now, I mean, he's still showing a lot of fight right now in the lineup. And as I say, you know what? This team is definitely challenged toughness-wise right now, but it's never bad to see a smaller guy like Pionk being the pain in the ass that he can be.
100%. And it wasn't just the hip check in the Dallas game. He threw one in the Columbus game as well. And that was at the time of the game. It was a couple minutes in, right? And I thought the first 5 minutes, Columbus was all over the Jets. They took a 1-0 lead. They had 5 shots early and then went 30 minutes without one. But Neil Pionk, that hip check, you love seeing that. You love seeing the pest, the smirk that gets under the opponent's skin so evidently, right? So I picked him for my trending up pick this week. And I know maybe some of the underlying numbers aren't kind to Neil Pionk coming out of the break, but when you have that element to your game, the hip checks, the pest, the smirk that draws an extra penalty, Jets got a power play out of that Robertson hip check scenario, right? Like that's an advantage for the Jets. So, well, maybe the power play recently isn't an advantage. They might be back to starting to decline power plays, Huss, with how things are going. But yeah, loved what I saw from Neil Pionk on the weekend.
Power play, definitely not a strength right now of the club. It is a prime game, and we are very kindly going to be joined by our boy Adnan Verk in just a minute. Just as we bring in Adnan, this segment's brought to you by GMC. Truck Month is on now at GMC. If you want something reliable, tough, and ready for whatever the schedule throws at you, that's the 2026 Sierra 1500 Pro Graphite Crew Cab in a nutshell. And it can be yours for 0% financing for 72 months with a factory 2-inch lift, off-road suspension, and a 5.3-liter V8. This is one ready for anything truck. Don't miss out. Get to your local GMC dealer and take advantage of Truck Month before it ends. All right, Prime Video, Jets Kraken tonight. We are very pleased to be joined by Adnan Verk, who'll be at the controls tonight. Adnan, what's up? Welcome back to the Peg.
Thanks, Andrew. Always good to be here. I made the trip up from Newark, New Jersey on this little connection in Toronto. Got to go see my parents in Maple and then off to lovely Manitoba. So a little chillier than I was anticipating. You know, it is early April. We were very spoiled in Denver last week. It was plus 20, but should be a great game tonight. Very excited as always to be in Winnipeg. The crowd's always awesome at Canada Life Center. Talking to Scott Arneal this morning. He knows his boys are in a dogfight right now, but as you know, second best record in the conference, but only the St. Louis Blues have been scorching. So hopefully the Jets can keep it going.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like, I mean, I lost to Dallas. I was just talking to Connor about, on Thursday night was really a tough one. I mean, they came back with a strong performance and it was the fastest game ever, the game on Columbus. I don't know if you caught any of it, Adnan, but let me ask you this. You've done a lot of hockey games. Can you ever remember the puck being dropped with over 12 minutes left in a period and going no more whistles right to the end of the period? That game was 2 hours and 9 minutes. There was still like 15 minutes left in the Leaf game when the Jets and Blue Jackets ended.
Yeah, that's pretty shocking. I don't think I've ever seen that, to be honest with you. I've watched a lot of hockey this season, and just in my career, that's pretty nuts. You know, we always use that expression, come playoff time, the referees swallow the whistles. But that's normally in reference to calling penalties. Just in general, there's always going to be some icing, some delay of game, something happening. So you're right, 12 minutes of continuous action. That's pretty something that's cool. As you know, I love baseball as well, so I appreciate the fact we have the pitch clock in baseball, things that kept going. If we can get hockey games moving faster, too, I'm in favor of it. That's great.
You mentioned this matchup tonight, which, 2 weeks ago or so was sort of shaping up to be an absolutely massive game for both teams. I mean, you're looking at the numbers right now. It is a literal must-win game for the Winnipeg Jets. But the other side of things, I mean, a really ill-timed late-season swoon for the Seattle Kraken has taken them out of a playoff spot to basically like a 1% chance of making it. Like, what's the word on the other side and what's happened to Seattle?
I talked to Lane Lambert, who naturally is frustrated and disappointed by what's happened. They've lost 12 of their last 19 games. So as you said, this slide could not have come at a worse time. And for much of the year, they have like a real lack of offensive talent. This does not appear to be a team that has any game breakers. But, Lane's a good coach. He keeps it tight, defensive structure, play a sound defensive games, limit mistakes, limit turnovers, get a timely goal, and hopefully you can win. And at least going into the break, they were doing that to look to be potentially a playoff spot. But as you said, the wheels have fallen off, and I just really think it's a collective lack of offensive talent. I mean, Shane Wright's missed the last 3 games. He's probably not going to play tonight. He's getting closer, but like he's been a real disappointment. Matty Beniers is like a two-way player, but he's not a game breaker. Like they don't have that guy. Everly's doing his best, but they don't have that guy that can really take over a game, and that's been frustrating. The one guy who's been a great story is Bobby McMahon, who I spoke to today. I think he's got 8 goals his last 14 games. He's great. And Lane was telling me he is like a prototypical power forward, like that guy that when you and I watched hockey growing up in the 90s, aside from fighting, which they don't do anymore, he said he would do all that. He's tough, he's skilled, he can fight. And McMahon's been that guy. So he's actually been a godsend for them. I asked him how he's been so effective. He's coming out of the break. The rest of the team has struggled. He's been really good. And Bobby told me, he said, well, the break was really long. I didn't want to look at it like it's a 2-week break. It was like 2 or 3 days. Almost treat it like an all-star break. 3 days to relax. Maybe some guys go to Cabos, Mexico, whatever, then come back and get after it. So he said, I'm the kind of guy, I have to stay physically ready, but also game ready and being aware of situations. So I think for anybody who has to deal with a break like that, Bobby McMahon certainly seemed to figure it out. And he's been the one guy that's been a mainstay for Seattle. Ever since he's come over, he's scored goals. So if there's one person the Jets should watch out for tonight, it's Bobby McMahon because he's been hot.
Yeah, and now I kind of wonder what we'll see out of Seattle because, and I mean, who knows what'll happen with the Jets? I mean, if they lose another game at some point, there's the natural sort of letdown when you know that your goal that you set out at the beginning of the season 6 months ago has sort of left. But I have a feeling, I mean, we'll see a desperate Winnipeg team tonight, as it should be, Adnan. I mean, we can talk about the disappointment and what the expectations were. The bottom line for the Winnipeg Jets is that if they have any hope of catching the Sharks, the Predators, and the Kings, who are all within 3 points of them, they're playing each other. They need to run the table right now, and they've got some tough games coming up, but you can't worry about the Blues on Thursday or Philly, who's a great story right now on Saturday, when you've got a Seattle team coming in that those games mean nothing if you can't get the win tonight.
Yeah, one of the other challenges for Seattle, Andrew, just has been their goaltending. Decourt hasn't been as good recently, so I expect to see Grubauer in there tonight. I like Joey Decourt a lot, and on a personal level, I had him on our podcast. Me and Jason Demers, NHL Unscripted. He's great at handling the puck. He's had a good season, but lately struggled, so that's adding to the issues for this Kraken team. But you're right, for Winnipeg, you can't worry about what's around you. Just keep winning. But as you said, what it becomes is like a bumper car race because there's 3 or 4 teams. If they're facing each other head to head, well, that team that gets 2 points, unfortunately, then you're falling back at them. You almost need them. If it was old school, just a bunch of ties, right? Forget about the overtime win, just a bunch of ties. They each get 1 point. You get 2 points, try to leapfrog them that way. But you're right, for Winnipeg, I think the best news for the Jets is that despite the fact you're 11 points of a playoff spot at 1 point, I mean, you're closer to the cellar than you were to the playoff spot. And of course, President's Trophy a season ago. The good news is the star players have stepped up big time. I mean, Connor Hrabchak's going to make his 7th straight start. He's got a .909 save percentage over his last 6 games. Kyle Connor's got 5 goals in his last 6 games, scored those 2 goals against Columbus. And Scott Arneal told me the previous game, he goes, he had like 4 or 5 really good chances because he kind of felt it coming. The dam was going to burst, that Connor was going to break out. He has been really good, but again, actually finding the back of the net, scored those 2. And Scheifele's story to me is amazing. I mean, 6 points away from tying the franchise record of 100 points for a Thrasher or a Jet is amazing. So at the very least, if you're a Jets fan, you go, we got to go down fighting with our best players. There's no accident. There's no secret as to how they're doing well. Scheifele could have 100 points, Connor putting up all these goals, Hellebuyck being a mainstay. If you're going to ride or die, go with those 3 and you like your chances.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about this later on, but if folks are looking for a goal prop tonight, I mean, all season long, it's like Scheifele or Connor never really got more than 1 or 2 ahead of each other. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's 55's turn tonight to score for the Winnipeg Jets. The playoff race in the West has been, we've called it a bit of a turtle derby for this final spot. The point numbers aren't really that impressive. Adnan, though, how much fun has it been following the East for you with that team, with your team? I mean, every single night, it seems like we've got a team going in, going out, and now the team that was never really a part of it, the Philadelphia Flyers, who we're going to see on Saturday here, have found their way into the mix and are now waking up today with control of their own destiny in a playoff spot.
Andrew, it's a remarkable story. Right now, if I turn the camera around, you can see I'm watching on Sportsnet the re-air of the Bruins and the Flyers as Rick Tocchet and company. It's a remarkable story. It really is. On so many different levels. At one point, they were down to a 3.8% chance of making the playoffs coming out of the break, and now they're at 53%. I mean, they're in the playoff position. They're third in the Metro right now. First time they're in a playoff position is January 12th. And it is currently April 6th. I mean, that is unbelievable result by this team. January is what appeared to have doomed them. Up until January, they had not gone more than back-to-back games with regulation losses. And then January, the wheels fall off. At one point, they were 0-5-1. You go, okay, that's pretty much ball game. But they have been tremendous coming out of the break, and it's goaltending that's kept them together. Dan Vladar has been a revelation this season, start to finish. And Ersson, who was unplayable in the first half, he had an 862 save percentage. He's been terrific coming out of the break. Add to that the reinforcements. Tyson Forster comes back after missing 50 games. He's arguably one of their best goal scorers. Connecting's one of my favorite players. He's been tremendous all season. Michkov's been up and down. I had a great game against the Blue Jackets the other night. The game against the Red Wings, I watched. Owen Tippett is on the verge of 30 goals. I texted with my buddy Sean McDonough. He goes, Tippett should be a star in this league. This guy's excellent. And, of course, Trevor Zegras has been a good story. But the guy I really want to talk about is Porter Martone. 19 years of age, number 6 overall pick in the draft, playing college hockey. Remember, Charles Barkley announced the pick. They had celebrities announce them. Barkley, a huge Flyers fan from his time with the Sixers. And Martone has been just tremendous. I mean, God, he's about to score the overtime winner in this game because that's what he did yesterday as I'm watching on tape delay. But, I mean, I think he had 9 shots on goal yesterday. Like, he was everywhere. Like, it was unbelievable watching this guy. Big, hulking presence. And some of the NHL Network people said to me, you know what? He could be like a Corey Perry in his prime, which I love that comp if I'm a Flyers fan. I mean, God, if you can get a Corey Perry type in his prime, that feels pretty good. So Forster's been back as helpful. They've got these guys like your Noah Cates who step up, but this Porter Martone's giving them a shot in the arm. And as you said, it went from like needing a lot of help. I mean, there was one day, I think it was Friday, everything that needed to happen happened. Like they beat the Islanders. Blue Jackets are reeling. Islanders have now fired their coach in Patrick Waugh. They appear to be done. They only have 4 games left. The Senators are 50-50. The Flyers' odds are now 53%. Like you said, if they win out, even if they lose one game, they're probably going to make the playoffs. And they haven't made the playoffs in 5 years. They haven't played meaningful hockey in a year. It's been like since the COVID year. So this is great news for Rick Tocchet. The sold-out crowd yesterday against the Bruins. I'm really happy for Flyers fans for that fan base because they do love their hockey.
Yeah, I mean, Porter Martone, and you want to talk about a way to score your first in the National Hockey League, do it in OT to put your team in a playoff spot. That's certainly a flair for the dramatic. You mentioned the Islanders. Islanders fire Waugh yesterday. Pete DeBoer coming back to the National Hockey League. You knew it was just a matter of time. Just thoughts on that? Like 4 games left in the season, coming off of John Tortorella returning to the league the week before.
2 of the guys who work with Andrew on our crew are intimately familiar with both those teams. Shane Knighty will be with me on the desk tonight. He works for the Vegas Golden Knights as a lot of their games. And Thomas Hickey will be between the benches. Former Islander, of course, works for Madison Square Garden and does the Islanders game. So that was the main talk with us today at Morning Skate. First off, Torts, Sheriff, Shane Knighty's nickname, said to me that, like, Torts is a guy who it's a bit misleading. And I said, what respect? He said, Bruce Cassidy's very tough on his guys, very demanding. He said he loves Bruce. But, you know, it can wear guys out a little bit. So you think you go from a hard, demanding coach to a player's coach. So you go, wait, Torts is not that. But he actually is more than you think. Like in the room, I think he's respected and liked by players more than you realize. And he has their attention. You know, at the very least, John Tortorella is a great motivator. Like, Torts is going to command the room and get your attention. And it's such a Vegas thing, you know, because it's a high, and I think it's actually a low-risk, high-reward move because they've been sleepwalking for weeks, if not months. It's been a pillow fight trying to win the Pacific Division. So even if you make the playoffs, you're not going to go anywhere. So you bring in Torts, who's only coaching the rest of this year. Like, it's an 8-game contract plus playoffs. He's like a broadcaster. He's getting paid per game. So if it works and you make the playoffs and you win a round, great. Torts might get a 2-year deal. If you don't, you said, well, we weren't going to go anywhere as a Bruce Cassidy the way it was going. Thanks for the effort, Torts. We'll go try to find our guy. So I actually love it from all perspectives. I know a cynic can say, oh, it's another retread, but Tortorella is always a coach who at least immediately gives you that Tortorella bump. He gets your attention. Year 1, the team always improves. Year 2, it depends. By year 3, people are tired of him. He gets fired. But nobody can deny he's a Stanley Cup champion. He's been there. And I do think a lot of focus is on him and Mitch Marner, how they're going to get along. Hey, Marner played great so far under Torts in the big game the other day. So he appears to get off to a good start. With regards to Waugh, I mean, my best friend's a huge Habs fan. He like adores Patrick Waugh like you wouldn't believe. So I am intimately familiar with the greatness of Patrick Waugh as a goalie. As a coach, I think it was an up and down tenure. I think the guys generally liked him. I don't think he's a great X's and O's guy. Again, I think he's getting by more on presence and communication, et cetera. And once they start to tune you out a little bit, you start to lose the room. And the Islanders, again, it's all about bad timing. You can't lose at this time. That 4-1 loss, the Flyers, was huge at UBS on Good Friday. You lose that kind of a game. I think the Islanders kind of felt like, again, we're not going to go anywhere with Patrick Waugh. They're probably done. So you bring in Pete DeBoer, where you go, well, what can you do really with 4 games left? Kind of like with Vegas, like John Stevens is the assistant coach. He's running the system. Like Torts can't bring in his own system. Similarly for Pete DeBoer, how much can you teach these guys? Even Scott Arneal was saying to me, he's like, there's so many games. When you actually do get a practice, which is rare, you can only work on one thing. Here's O-zone puck possession. Today is D-zone puck possession. Today is power play. Today is penalty kill. And it's an hour. You try to teach some stuff at morning skate, but it's tough, the condensed schedule.
All right, there was Adnan Verk on WST. I think we may have lost Adnan, but some great stuff from the host of NHL Hockey Prime Video tonight, 6:30. We'll fire it up with the Jets and the Kraken. Maybe it was a good thing that we ended it there, because we didn't have to get into the weekend for the Blue Jays as they get ready to host the Los Angeles Dodgers tonight. I'll hit that with Connor a little bit later on. But Jeff Hamilton's going to join us in about 10 minutes. Let's hear from Coach Scott Arneal. We'll get Connor back in and we can discuss about this. But, the big news today is both Nino and Vlad back in the lineup, Connor. And you know what? Hang tight. Let's hear what Scott Arneal has to say, and then we'll discuss. Here's the coach this morning announcing the return of to the NHL Jets veteran forwards.
Yeah. Prior to that, I'll just mention that Morgan Barron's out week to week now. So he got banged up in the Columbus game. So it kind of opens up, opportunity for those guys. They've been, like you said, kind of getting up to speed, conditioning, the off-ice stuff, the touches on the ice. So, 2 veteran guys that, obviously have a big history here. That important game tonight, and with Bear going down, those 2 guys coming in.
Just in terms of with Morgan, if he'd have been available, then that might have changed how you would have approached
whatever. I could always I could have made a move.
Yeah.
For both of them, one of them, whatever it might. Obviously, it changed a lot when we got the news that Bear was out.
Clearly, with their experience, though, you feel confident that they're able to handle jumping in after a long absence into something
I
like
talked
this.
to him about, obviously this time of year, it's like, I know I'll keep saying all the time, but it's fast moving water, and it's at the pace of where the game's at. But these guys have helped us, play. They've helped us, obviously, their history here. But at the same time, they're veteran guys at key times in the year, and. We grinded them hard here in the last week here, conditioning wise, to get them, get that part of it, make sure that's up to where it needs to be, and then now it's just them getting out and getting their touches and kind of getting used to it. I think as the game will go on, they'll get a little bit more comfortable for them. Yeah, we're not telling a player you can't play.
All right, so there's Scott Arneal on that, and. It seemed like those guys were sort of around, ready to go. I think situationally, a lot of things depended on, put it this way. I have a lot of time for what Parker Ford did in the lineup, to be honest with you. I was really enjoying, the tenacity he was showing. I thought he was making the most of his opportunity, Connor. But with a team that is more of a veteran team, I guess when you're down to your last out and now you're losing a guy as important as Morgan Barron, this is the time they feel if these guys are ready to go, give them a chance to go in and try and make a difference tonight.
For sure. And when it comes to Parker Ford and Danny Gilk, I'm still unsure if they're going to have to send Parker Ford down, because both of those guys were recalled under emergency conditions. Scott Arneal was asked about that today as well. He wasn't sure. He hadn't talked to Chevy yet in that sense, because now Barron is hurt. So can Ford stay up under emergency conditions now that Barron is hurt, even though it's a different emergency than what it was that necessitated the call up in the first place? So that's something we'll be watching for today. But I agree with you. They're playing limited minutes. They're on the 4th line. They're playing 8 minutes a night, but they're bringing the speed. They're bringing the energy. You saw it from Danny Gilkin too. You look at the NHL Edge stats and all the speed bursts and how fast he's getting and getting it on the forecheck, all of that stuff. I thought those guys were great in that role. And they can be depth guys in the organization going forward. And Danny Jokin, obviously a prospect, a little bit younger. He has more growing to do, but Niederreiter and Meskov are healthy. Like you said, Huss, they believe they're down to their final out, and you got to win everything out. And if those guys are good to go, Barron comes out, you slide them in and give them an opportunity to do it again.
The whole Nino thing was sort of weird. And we heard people in Switzerland say that he was done for the year, played in the Olympics and then got shut down. Arnie was asked and just when they decided to shut Nino down with some nagging injury.
Yeah. I mean, we're not telling a player you can't play, you have to have surgery. I mean, that comes down to a player and his agent and his people closest to him. It's been something that's been bugging him. But like you mentioned, there's a pretty big year and a lot of things going on. And I think if he had a do-over, he might have got it done at the start of the year. But that's just me guessing. I'm not saying 100%. But yeah, it just at the end of the day, the players think they can play through it and hope that they can. And he went through stretches where it felt good. And I remember talking to him, and he's saying how it felt real good. But it doesn't help when we have a schedule like the league has a schedule going into that Olympic break. You're playing so many nights, and it's tough for the recovery of those type of things.
I guess the hope being, and he said it feels great now that he's recovered, the hope is you get maybe an improved version of what you had from Nino earlier in the year because he's cleaned it up now.
And a well-rested one. Both him and Vladdy, they're rested, ready to go, hungry. So we're hoping that that's a spark for us.
All right. Now, one more significant move today, Connor, and that involves the first power play unit, which has certainly had its fair share of struggles as of late.
Yeah, so Jonathan Toews moves up to the top power play unit, Cole Perfetti down to the second power play unit. We can get to Scardino's comments in a moment, but Liz and I were talking on Sunday Live about the power play, and it's funny, we talked about how they're not winning enough faceoffs, the entry isn't as crisp, and therefore they're just not spending enough time in the offensive zone. And when they get set up, yeah, they'll get a chance. Kyle Connor will get a one-timer, Velarde down at the side of the net. They can do things, but it's the initial possession. It's the getting into the zone that feels like a taller task this year. And the Winnipeg Jets power play, the Sportsnet broadcast showed it on Saturday. I'm sure you saw it, Huss. Since January 22nd, is 31st in the NHL. Only the Chicago Blackhawks are worse. Then they missed on their power play opportunity in that Columbus game too. It has been a rough go for the power plays. So Scardino was asked today about the power play as well. We can maybe clip that up. But Jonathan Toews up to the top power play unit. And Arneal noted face-offs and spending more time in the offensive zone is kind of the big reason there.
Yeah, here's the clip. This is Arnie earlier today on the shake-up to the top power play unit.
One face-offs too, kind of going against Seattle, because it gives us obviously a starting point and a different starting point. The power play hasn't been clicking, and we need it to go here at these last couple of games. And there's some familiarity with Vladdy, Nino, Fets, kind of all those guys going back in with NP with other groups. So it's a little bit of that, trying to find something here that kind of sparks it a little bit for both groups. We had success when JT moved up with that. With that top group earlier in the year, puts Fets out on the flank where he's played a lot of the last couple of years. And so it's just kind of looking for a different look, maybe a little different attack points.
There have been some entries that maybe look slower, whereas you guys used to enter pretty much at will with that top unit. What's going on there? What's slowing that down?
I don't know if it's always the case. Sometimes it's penalty killers. You're seeing a lot of teams getting deep. Not just against us, against other teams. The F1 gets really deep and tries to disrupt, as we would do against a Makar or against the, Hughes. You try to get to those guys down deeper so that it slows it up, and that's what you're seeing teams do against JMO and P. And we're trying to alleviate that. I think your group kind of catches on, and maybe it's a little bit the second time down that all of a sudden the speed comes back because you're getting ahead of that guy trying to get down ice pressure.
All right, so there's the coach on a myriad of issues right now with the power play. But I will say this, with Toews' excellence in the faceoff circle, having the puck a little bit more, definitely a good place to start. But as he mentioned right there, and you guys pointed out, the entries has been a real problem. I mean, they just have not had a lot of success in taking the puck in and setting up and taking advantage of the 5-on-4 situation.
100%. And the most puzzling part about the entries, Huss, I know Arneal talked about how teams are defending it differently. They're sending one penalty killer deeper into the Jet zones when they get a clear. They're pressuring them earlier, and that's maybe throwing them off a little bit. You would think like, oh, Nikolai Ehlers leaves. No wonder the entry isn't as sharp this year. But Ehlers was just kind of a wall guy on the entry last year. It was still Scheifele and Connor doing the kind of cross in the neutral zone. It's the same thing. It's just nowhere near as crisp this year. And obviously, Jonathan Toews winning a few more draws will help with that offensive zone possession. Toews has tipped a lot of pucks this year from the middle of the ice too. He'll be playing in that pop middle position. So there are certain elements, and Arneal talked about different attack points. I think that's one of them. Toews with the deflections in the middle that they're going to look to get to. And again, the power play can't be much worse than what it's been doing for the past month and a half. So they're going to change some things up, and we'll see if it works.
We'll talk more about that and the Jets' predicament coming up in just a moment with Jeff Hamilton of the Winnipeg Free Press. We'll try and hear from Nino Niederreiter before the show is over, and we'll get to early Masters lines and more later on in hour 2. But to kick off the second hour, Jeff Hamilton is on deck. He will join us next here on WST. Princess Auto is a proud sponsor of Winnipeg Sports Talk, and in a lot of ways synonymous with Winnipeg. Headquartered here in the Peg, founded here in Winnipeg, and now serving Canadians coast to coast with the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. So while we wait for the Bombers to kick off, get ready for spring. Those projects on your list with great deals throughout the month waiting for you at your local Princess Auto, Panet Road, Portage Avenue West in the city, out in Brandon. And you can always shop online 24 hours a day at princessauto.com. Spring is just around the corner, and our friends at Chud's Power Sports up in Gimli, Manitoba's power sports superstar, are ready to get this snow out of here. But before we do that, great end-of-season deals on sleds and snowmobiles that you can check out. But as we get excited for the snow to leave, great preseason deals on motorcycles of all brands, the best in ATVs and side-by-sides, not to mention golf carts for the summer up ahead as well. And it doesn't stop there. Amazing RV options for you to take advantage of the summer, and so many options when it comes to boats as well, in addition to outboard motors from Suzuki and Mercury. The best deals in town. That's how they've been in business as Manitoba's power sports superstore for 80 years. Pop out and see him in Gimli at the corner of Highway 8 and 231, and shop online today at their website at chudspowersports.com. April and spring are here, and Donnie and the gang at Manitoba Battery are kicking it off strong with their Spring Power event. Right now, you can save big on the batteries that you actually need this season. Lawn tractor batteries starting at just $37.50. RV and deep cycle batteries from $69.50, and heavy duty power like Group 27 and 78 DT starting at $89.50. Need serious cranking power? Check out their 13-inch stud post battery, $94.50 while supplies last. All in stock and all priced to move. Visit Manitoba Battery on the north side on Logan Avenue, on the south side on Dovercourt Drive, and get powered up for spring at Manitoba Battery, powering what matters. Check them out online today at manitobabattery.com. All right, it is time to bring in Jeff Hamilton. This segment is brought to you by our friends at Toyota. If you're looking to dominate off the ice as much as your team does on it, check out the Toyota Tacoma. Its standard I-Force engine boasts an impressive towing capacity of up to 6,400 pounds. In fact, it's the most powerful Tacoma ever. So whether you're hauling your rink to your gear to the rink or heading to an away game, you can tackle it with ease. And when it's time to load up, the available power liftgate makes loading your gear in and out a cinch. Experience power, capability, and convenience with the Toyota Tacoma. Visit shoptoyota.ca or your local Prairie Toyota dealer during Red Tag Days from March until May. Let's bring the hammer in here. We will be back with $100 bounties on our heads Wednesday night for the return of the WST Poker Open over at Coolbet. Would love to see you join us for it. Hammer, how was the long weekend? What's going on?
Yeah, weekend was great, my friend. It was, You know, it was long, which is better than short weekends. So it's, you know, enjoyed some of the weather. It was a bit sloppy. Ate far too much food. Huss was super tired by last night, but got a good sleep in and ready to take on this week. Absolutely.
Well, you know who needs to be ready to take on this week is the Winnipeg Jets, because it kind of feels like it is last call for any realistic playoff hopes or opportunities. I mean, they had a chance to maybe get one that a lot of people didn't have on their card against Dallas. They weren't able to get the win, which really puts their backs against the wall. And then they go out and squeeze 2 points out of Bones and the Blue Jackets to keep their very faint hopes alive. But going into tonight, Seattle really has already fallen out of it and is pretty much done. But it's very clear from my perspective that they need a 7-game winning streak if they want to be in the playoffs. 1 down, 6 to go. You can't focus on Thursday or Saturday yet, though. It is all about tonight. And the Jets come in with a revamped power play and 2 returning veterans to tonight's lineup for the 6:30 puck drop.
Yeah, you mentioned that Seattle's out of it, Huss. If they win tonight, they're 1 point behind the Winnipeg Jets with the exact amount of games played, and that's how tight this race is. And you know, I mean, to your point about Dallas, you know, I was talking with family this weekend, and it was like, you know, asking me about the Jets and their opportunities and, you know, playoff hopes and whatnot. And I just said, look, obviously any loss at this point is difficult to digest for this team. You know, they're in the thick of a race. They got teams ahead of them. They need help, right? But if there's a silver lining, I don't think a lot of people expected Winnipeg to beat Dallas. So if Dallas was going to lose a game, if Winnipeg was going to lose a game, it was likely going to be to the Stars, right? A team that, you know, wasn't playing great hockey, but wasn't going to let another Central Division team come into their barn and dictate how the game was going to go, right? So they found their juice in that game. So my point in bringing that up is not so much to forgive the Jets, you know, with that loss, but it's to express how big tonight's game is. I mean, this is the Seattle Kraken. They've lost 4 games in a row. Their leading scorer has 52 points. Like, I was listening to, you know, I think their broadcaster earlier on today, and it was like, you know, hearing them, you make it sound like the Seattle Kraken were the Globetrotters, how it's like the scoring has been evenly distributed amongst the roster. No, that's just they don't have a ton of scorers. Like, Everly's leading the club, I believe, with 52 points. The Jets need to win tonight's game. Not just because they need it for the playoffs, obviously, but because the team they're playing is worse than them. So if they're going to go out and lose tonight's game at home, I mean, I think we could probably write their obit after this one. But the reality is the Jets don't control their destiny. They're not the Ottawa Senators. They can't say, well, if we win these next 6 games, we're guaranteed to get into the playoffs. That's the reality of this team. It's been the reality of this team for months. As Scott Arneal has said over and over after games, we need a lot of help, right? So not a comfortable place, Huss, and certainly, you know, especially when you factor in tonight, like, who are the 2 teams that play? Nashville and St. Louis, I believe, play each other tonight, or Nashville and LA, one of those 2. There you go. So, like, the best the Jets can do tonight with a victory is to hold ground. And when you're holding ground, when you only have, you know, what would be 5 games after this game, it's hard when you still need to make up that difference. But what else can the Jets do but face each game, each opponent one at a time, and hope for the best?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of stunning. We were just talking to Adnan Verk, you know, just the Kraken, who had been in the mix pretty much all season long, have just fallen out of it in the past 2 weeks. I mean, they come in with less than a 1% chance. You know, a win tonight would take them to 1.3% chance. So I think we can basically cross them off. The question is, do the Jets get crossed off tonight if they don't win this game? And I mean, I think the answer to that is pretty clearly yes. Are you surprised that, you know, after being off for so long, they're bringing both Nino and Vlad back in a game of this much importance? And do you think this would have happened either with one of the players if Morgan Barron wasn't banged up and unavailable?
I think it's one of those. I'm not surprised that Vlad Nemestikov, he's been out for 16 games, and Nino similar timelines, you know, whatever. Like, that's a lot of games. It surprised me a little bit. I even sent a note to Connor, your teammate at WST, about, you know, it was interesting to see them slide into the 3rd line, right? Like, ahead of Jonathan Toews, into that grouping where it's like these guys haven't played in a very long time. Like, they're going to be rusty. Like, how much can you really expect from them? But I also think, you know, to Scott Arneal, I imagine they bring a veteran, presence. And there's also the point where these guys want to play, right? Like they've gone through the injury parts. Players don't just they're going to be rusty from game action, but they're not going to be injured, right? Like they're going to be ready to go. They're going to be able to take the bumps and bruises of a physical hockey game. It's just whether their hands and their head are going to be up to speed or their legs are going to be up to speed, right? That's too much time to be away from hockey to just assume that you're going to come back into the lineup and be as effective as you once were. So I don't know if I'm surprised. I think, again, like I think Arneal probably leans on the experience and understanding of these players. And I'm not saying he does, I'm not saying he doesn't want to get into hurt guys' feelings or whatever. I'm not suggesting that, but if Vlad Nemestikov and Nino Niederreiter come to them and say we're ready to go, like as veterans that are making millions of dollars a year, like I think they kind of expect to be in the lineup, and that's probably just the head coach being, well, okay, like here we go. But I guess you could make the argument because of the situation, because there's only 6 games remaining, because where the Jets are in the standings, it's less of like oh yeah, absolutely, like come on in. The problem is the Jets have been playing good hockey. I just results wise, I just don't know if I'm convinced with the style they're playing. Like I don't think they've been very good. That was a big win against Columbus, but Columbus looked garbage in that game. And got to give credit to the Jets for making them look that way for sure. But I just I don't think that Arneal necessarily loves the game either, even though there's been success here.
Yeah, I mean, listen, to be honest, it looked like 2 teams that just couldn't wait to get to April 16th. I mean, I've been talking about it. I tweeted about it. I was asking the guys before. I mean, it was the fastest game like I've ever seen. I'm still like, I don't know how easy it is to get duration of games, but that could be the fastest game in the NHL.
You can get duration of games. I saw your tweet. I was curious about that because I also thought it was. I'm kind of not like anal on it, but I always look at game times and game speeds and whatever. And that one whipped by super quickly. I think you can go on to the game, the event sheets or the game summaries at the end. I believe they have a duration of game.
No, good. We'll talk to our pal Chad GPT and see if he can do a little bit of work for us and check out on that, because it was bizarre. That being said, I mean, listen, we know where things are at right now, and being real, I mean, as I say, I mean, like when this team was out of it in January in 32nd place, it didn't look like this was the year. And to their credit, they've done enough to put themselves back in the conversation. But we are getting into that territory where we could be staring at the worst case scenario, where this team doesn't have a sniff of a top 5 pick, barring, winning a 1.5% lottery chance to get into the top 2. And otherwise has falling back. And Jeff, when you look at, the overall standings right now, the Leafs and Panthers both lost 2 on the weekend. So the Jets, with their win on Columbus, passed both of those teams. The Kraken have lost 4 in a row. The Kraken are 3 back of Winnipeg right now. The Rangers have actually been playing a little bit better. They crushed Washington last night. Yeah. But you can safely say that the Canucks, Blackhawks, and Flames, they're not moving that situation. The Jets have 6 or more points on all of those teams. The Rangers and the Kraken are 3 back. Panthers 1, and the Leafs tied with the Jets, but the Jets are higher in the standings because of their regulation overtime wins. Crazy thing is, though, that the Blues are tied with them. The Blues have the tiebreaker because of regulation wins. These teams play each other on Thursday. And then, of course, you got the San Jose Sharks, who have a game in hand and are 1 point up. I guess it was bound to be this way, but we are going into a final 10 days of the season where, say this team goes 5-1, they're probably looking at like the 12th or 13th pick, barring any sort of insane lottery luck, where you wouldn't even be able to move up high enough to get number 1 or number 2. Or, for instance, if they lose this game tonight and then, win one of their final few, you actually could be right back to where they were, which is sort of part of that group of 6. But it seemed almost inevitable, with the Panthers shutting everybody down, no Austin Matthews, and the Leafs being where they are. To be honest, the only real surprise of all of this is the fact that the Blues have played so well that they're now where the Jets are and technically ahead of them.
Yeah, I mean, and this is like this is the paradigm you find yourself in as one of those teams that is in that group, like because it's always kind of been this way, Huss. I know you mentioned like the three at the bottom of the West have somewhat separated themselves. Like 6 points isn't a crazy amount, and technically could potentially be made up in this stretch, but it's safe to assume that those three are set there. But for a long time, Huss, like if the Jets lost, the Jets have been close to the playoffs line as they have been to like last place in the conference. So like we've been kind of playing this pendulum swing for a while where like if they win, it's like wow, they're in this position where it's, can you believe it? Would the Jets actually make the playoffs after such a bad season? And when they lose, it's like they're done, right? And then they win another game and the conversation, like I can only listening to your show on the regular, you guys are back and forth, you blow at the win with the losses, right? That's not because you want to do that. That's because that's what the hockey we've been, in some ways forced to watch here is this back and forth. The Jets have been playing better hockey of late. That's put them in a better situation. But this is really the reality of it. If they give their, say the Jets give their best effort here, go 5-1 in these last 6 games, they might still not make the playoffs. So it's like, you're kind of hoping, you're only hoping for one spot, and that's the final wild card spot and a date with the Colorado Avalanche. And we all talked about, how that series might look, but might be different because Winnipeg seems to have their number this year. But the reality is the Jets are probably more likely to finish 9th or 10th place. And the frustration for the fans who, there's a good sector of fans that want them to keep pushing to make the playoffs. There's also a good sector of fans that want to have a better odds at that lottery pick or get a better pick based on their standings or whatever. But the fact is, the management might even want that, right? And I'm not saying he does, but I'm saying you probably want a better pick if you don't make the playoffs. However, but at the same time though, like the players don't have that feeling. And the reality is it's the players who are on the ice. And the other thing is they're not just playing for that last playoff spot, Huss. They're playing to remove the potential designation as the 6th team in NHL history to win the President's Trophy and then not make the playoffs. And I think that's more of that might be more of an interest to Scott Arneal as the 6th coach than the actual team, because it's it's less of individual where it is the coach is on that. So I wonder if the players with this inconsistency, but they are again playing better hockey here, but not really playing overly convincing hockey. It'd be great to know their psyche. I know they're not thinking, they're thinking pushing for the playoffs. They don't care who their better pick is next season necessarily. So that's what's working against those that hope that the Jets, and that's the frustrating part. It's the team that want them to win when they don't win, they're frustrated. It's the team, it's the group of people that want them to lose, and when they win, they're frustrated. So it is a lose-lose situation for one half of or one part of the fans here, and a winning situation for the other. It's just that's the reality they've been in. That's the reality they'll be in for the next 10 days.
Listen, we've been here for about 2 months, but I mean, it is the worst possible place to be in as a fan. In that,
totally,
you realize the situation in the big picture, but I mean, your team's going out there, they're playing hard. I mean, you naturally want good things to come the way of your team, but you realize that the wins can actually potentially be things that are not good in the long term. Now, listen, I realize there's a ton of variability. First of all, with the draft, I mean, there's no guarantee that. I mean, they're picking 18-year-olds. I mean, it is a very, very inexact science. And listen, I don't think as much as hype as Gavin McKenna's had, there's not a Celebrini, like a full-fledged franchise-changing player waiting for you automatically if you take that number 1 pick. But for a team in the situation that the Jets are in, an influx of a young player, hopefully destined to become a star, is exactly something that would be a huge benefit to this team. And I mean, I guess we just talk about it because it's the paradigm or the predicament that we're all in right now, because there's no easy answer. I mean, it kind of is going to be, it'll be what it's going to be at the end of the season. And I mean, to your point about the President's Trophy, if you look at the crazy thing is this would be 2 straight years of this happening, because the New York Rangers did the exact same thing last season, followed out their President's Trophy win with a very, very middling season. And to put it into perspective, I've got last year's standings set up here right now. So the Rangers ended up finishing 3 games above 500 for 85 points. And that is essentially pretty much where the Jets are right now. The Jets are 2 games above 500. So say they go 3-2-1 the rest of the way, which I think is very possible. You're basically talking about that 85-point season. Now, the Rangers, I think last year ended up being 12th in the queue. Let me just check that. There's 5. So
and
they were 11th. They were 11th beforehand. Maybe it's 10, maybe it's 9, in and around on that. But the other thing is there's not really a move that this team can make. Like, we can't say, oh, management's blowing it right now by not, well, doing what? You got to this is your roster. These are the guys that are going out there. And as he said, I mean, they're professionals. I'm sure they are probably somewhat embarrassed that they're in the situation that they're in right now based on what happened earlier on in the season. But these guys are pros. I mean, they're going out. They've got a game tonight. They're going to drop the puck. They're going to go out there for their shifts, and they're going to try and score goals and do what their coach tells them to do. So, I mean, it is frustrating on probably both sides, because I think even fans that really want them to make the playoffs, I mean, listen, I would love to be able to get the whites on and go out to the rink. And I think there'd be a lot of positives for that, especially if some of the younger players are in the lineup at that point. But it seems like such a big climb right now that, a game like tonight could be turning the lights out on that. And maybe that changes things in the final 5 games. But because of being officially eliminated and all that, I have a feeling that this team's going to be going out there and seeing what they can do. And then you've also got you think the Jets are going to have any appetite to lose to the St. Louis Blues after what happened last year? Absolutely not. Yeah. And then they better be ready on Saturday, because you've got a Philly team that has all the momentum in the world and has done what they wanted to do, and that was make up a big gap in a much harder conference and get into the playoffs. So I, like many people, am really torn on a day-by-day basis on this, but I do think that, let's just say, if things didn't go their way over the last 6 games, would not be the worst thing to happen. And as I say, we'll all be hitting the draft lottery sims until it really matters. And maybe, like happened before with the Jets and the Patrick Laine draft, they make a move and get up into the top 2.
Well, and this is the thing, Huss. There's a few things there. And the brutal part for the Jets is that they're kind of trending to finish 9th or 10th place, right? And that puts you in a position where, you disappoint the people who were hoping, you'd make the playoffs. And to be honest with you, I'm with you there, Huss. Like, at this point where they are in the standings, might as well take a run at the playoffs. So get some excitement into the city, do your best. It's probably not going to be, a long run for you, just given, the season and who you're going to have to play. But it brings some level of excitement, and the playoffs is the playoffs. Anything can happen, right? Like, that's what we're led to believe. So, but the other part too is, like, you bring up the Rangers. And I think the Rangers are a great example, because the Rangers are nothing like the Winnipeg Jets. Like, the Rangers they win the President's Trophy, they don't make the playoffs, and then where are they now this year? And they got a ton of, of contracts. They got a good goalie and whatever. Like, this year, they decided to get rid of Panarin, and they just shopped him open in the public. They told their team and their leaders that, like, yeah, we're gonna get this done. We're gonna, we need to change things. It's not working in the Big Apple, and you know what? Like, your time is up here, right? Like, that's essentially what they say to these players. Like, your golden run in the Big Apple is over, and now we're gonna go find new players. The Jets don't have that luxury, right? And they haven't been particularly. Okay.
Let me ask you this, because I was
about to launch into my point about the Jets here, but that's what I'm saying. There's serious parallels. The Jets have to rely on drafting.
Well, okay. But I guess, there's also trading as a possibility, because they do have a lot of players. Like, the Rangers at the beginning of this season thought that they'd checked off their boxes and they were ready to go. They acquired JT Miller. They were coming out. They were going to be back in the playoffs. They're going to be right there with everybody else. And then they were really bad for the better part of 40 to 50 games. it was clear that they weren't intending on re-signing Panarin, and then they made the moves that, if you're in last place, you would expect to do of a player with an expiring contract. But if this continued, like, just say this season finishes where it is and the Jets are picking 10th or whatever, and you go into next season and you go through the first 35, 40 games and you haven't gotten back to where you thought you should be and where you were beforehand, like, is that what it would take to have some significant change within the core of this team?
10th overall?
No, I'm talking like if next year the Jets found themselves after 35, 40 games in the bottom 5 or 6 of the league, like the Rangers did this year, is that what the catalyst would be to actually move off of some of the guys that do have trade protection, but also probably would be interested in going to a place where maybe, and I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I just think it's highly unlikely that happens in the offseason.
Well, yeah, and I go as far as to say, like, you make it sound like if the Jets decide that they're not, like, next year doesn't work out, and I mean, let's be honest here, like, what's suggesting that this year's a one-off, right? Like, because you're going to, like, are you going to be able to expect the same thing from Nino Niederreiter and Vlad Nemestikov as 2 years ago? Obviously not. And so, you have other UFAs that you lost Ehlers, so it's hard to bring in that replacement. We're led to believe that nobody wants to come to Winnipeg. So, yeah, I guess trading is an option. And the trading thing, to me, like, we know how loyal this team is. Like, do you honestly see this management group that's re-upped these guys and has recommitted to this core, going to them as early as next season and saying, yeah, it's just not working out, we're going to try to trade you? I think what would be far more likely is if the Jets were to, trip over themselves or have a bad first half of the season. I think there's some guys here who are signed to long-term contracts, exactly who they are, who start wondering if the promises they were told 2 years ago about paying to the cap and being a competitive team and being a perennial, playoff team and Stanley Cup contender, if that just fades away by next year and there's no sign of getting better, what's the prospect of signing Josh Morrissey to extension? What's the, I think you're going to have guys who are looking at him being like, I want to go play on a better team, a team that has, you might even get trade requests. I guess my point in saying to this, we can't predict the future. We don't know exactly what's going to happen, but if I had to make an educated guess, I say it's far more likely that players would come to this management and ask to be dealt than this management doing what we saw with the New York Rangers and going them and being like, yeah, guys, like, your time's up in Winnipeg.
I guess it doesn't really matter what comes first, the chicken or the egg, because these things only happen if both sides are on the same. Now, to your point,
no, it does matter. It does matter though, because it's the ownership and the management that's deciding their team. Like, you're never going to convince players that they're not trending in the right direction, right? You're never going to convince a locker room that, like, you're going to have to acknowledge it yourself and make those tough decisions. What the New York Rangers did was public, but it wasn't easy. Like, you can't just go to your like, not a lot of teams can just go to their locker room and tell them, like, it's, like, this isn't working out and be so public about it. Like, so that's the difference, I think.
At one point, I mean, the thing is, though, if you go from your President's Trophy season to missing the playoffs to next year, and again, I'm not saying this is going to happen. This is just a possibility. I'm hoping that it goes the other direction. But no matter what, if you kind of stay the course, you come into the season with a coach on the hot seat. You come with a team that has all these high expectations, that'll be saying all the right things. And then if it doesn't go that way, it doesn't really matter whether the players are getting antsy first and going, hey, whatever, we're bad again. Maybe there's something better out there for me, or whether management says, you know what? We got to do something, and the only way we can significantly change our futures is to now realistically consider maybe moving one of these guys. Whatever, the guys don't get traded if the team isn't willing to do it, and none of these players can be traded if they're not willing to be traded. So, however you get to that point is, I guess, my question is, does that point come if they are halfway through the season and floundering next year? But some would argue that those sort of conversations should happen earlier. Some have maintained that for a while. Some would say this is an off season based on everything that you have, where changing that core in some ways would be beneficial. I am of the opinion, just based on history, that does not happen. But I think you have to realize that, if things just don't go back to a great start to the season and solidly a playoff team and looking like the team that was 2 years ago, that something's got to give. And I guess I would suggest that wouldn't be a whole season thing, because to be honest, if this season started the way, or this next season, first 40 games went the way the first 40 games of this year, there's no way they could continue to stay the course, in my opinion, no matter how loyal you think everyone in that organization is.
Yeah, it's just it's tough to predict this. Again, to your point, to my point earlier, was that it's hard to predict the future and all this, right? We don't know if the Jets, but the reality is the definition of a one-off is one season. So if the management believes this is a one-off, that this is just a down year, made some bad moves in the summer, and there are only a few pieces, players that fit their system better, and things will improve, right? If they believe they're on the cusp of a playoff spot this season in a year where they can identify they can't get anywhere near the system that they employed the year before when they were President's Trophy, then yeah, you can kind of come to this realization or suggestion that it's a one-off. But if it doesn't work next year, Huss, like, this is the fear I have for the Winnipeg Jets, and I've said this on this show, I've talked about this with colleagues, friends, family, whatever, is my fear for the Winnipeg Jets is that we're slowly ushering in the original, the Jets 2.0, but the first version, right? Where you have older veterans who are your core, where they've established themselves in this league. I would argue that the Jets have more offensive talent in Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor than they had in Blake Wheeler and Andrew Ladd and those guys, Brian Little, right? But it's kind of ushering in this new, not old, but new, like, era of the Winnipeg Jets with the same leadership, the same group. And we all know, like, look at the teams that are doing special things. They're young, they're fast. They allow for these kids to come in and flourish, right? Like that Hudson guy on Washington, man, like just the ability to do that move at the blue line, like that takes culture. I know that sounds crazy, but like that's what I mean. Like this league is moving to faster, younger, more exciting. Like Macklin Celebrini is capturing the whole league. He's single-handedly almost, it feels like, and that's no disrespect to the rest of the Sharks, but when you see the point differential between him and the next guy, like he is bringing that organization back into the playoff, potentially back into the playoffs this year. They might end up missing, but wow, look at this 18-year-old, 19-year-old kid, being able to flourish on his team. Like if the Jets just commit to this same leadership group, like as impressive as Mark Scheifele is playing, and as much as he's fighting against father time here and is on the cusp of his first ever 100-point season, and Kyle Connor is lighting the net, that's great. I don't know if you can still expect the same things from them year after year here. And if that's going to be the group that's tying up most of the money and dictating a lot of what's going on, it feels like we're just, again, kind of headed to that. So when you're a team that's, built on draft and develop, you need to hit, whether you're picking, as a lottery pick or you're picking in the 15 to 20 range. Like you can't really afford not to hit. So it's just, it's to me, the challenge here, and it's not like, what Kevin Cheveldayoff has in front of is an easy thing. And we've seen him, I'd almost argue that he's at his best when his back's, when he's backed into a corner. And I can't help but to think, this is the worst corner he's arguably been backed into this summer. And can he pull that rabbit out of his hat again? I'm not ruling it out, because we've seen some of this stuff in the past where it's been like he's looked like it's impossible, and he's won trades and he's provided new life. But I would argue that the obstacles in front of him, because they're no longer a Stanley Cup contender, they're no longer, potentially even a playoff team that a player might go, look, I'm not hearing great things about Winnipeg, but it's look at how they're performing. They don't even have that. So this summer is going to be even more challenging. And it's really interesting. It will be really interesting to see, obviously these final few weeks here, but into the offseason, and of course next year, like the immediate future looks very interesting, and I would argue very different than what we were talking about a year ago.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's a lot of things that we as fans and as talking heads or whatever talk about, oh, they should do this, they should do that. I mean, listen, to your point, they couldn't get top end guys to come with trade protection for freaking 6 weeks in the playoffs last year when they were the number 1 team in the league. Like Brock Nelson said, yeah, thanks, but no thanks, and went to Colorado. And I'm sure there were other players as well that, we didn't hear about that is the situation. So, I mean, it does put on way more pressure onto the organization to do that. And, we'll be talking about this core of Hrabchak and Scheifele and Connor. Of course, Gabe Vilardi's had a great season and he's signed. I don't think he's going anywhere. But you mentioned him before, and a guy that I think is going to be the linchpin of this entire conversation is Josh Morrissey. And Josh Morrissey, after this year, is going to have 2 years left on his contract. Now, this team, the city, the fans, from top down, everyone loves Josh Morrissey. He is an elite defenseman in this league. But you brought up a good point earlier on today. Like, okay, what if he doesn't feel like this is what he wants at the end of this contract? I have defended their decision not to trade Nikolai Ehlers last year. Good teams don't trade away their most important players when they're first in the league and they're looking to win the cup. But I'll tell you what, if you're not in that stratosphere, and the Jets are far from it right now, and they are not this year and next season, and they have the vibe that this might be tougher to get done, acting early can often be a real benefit. But the reason why I call him the linchpin is if that were to happen and you're inevitably bringing back a number of pieces, many of them being futures, and you got a bunch of 30-plus-year-old dudes on long-term contracts in the room, what does that do? And does that set off a chain of events? I mean, there's so many possibilities, just never mind free agents or anything like that, of how things could shake out. And I think to the Jets' credit, they've got these guys on deals that, if they're willing and it comes to that point where they're going to trade some of them, I think they'll get really good value. I mean, especially you can talk about Scheifele's age. He's putting up 100 right now. Look what Nazem Kadri got. And in the new cap era,
Brad Marchand.
8.5, exactly. And obviously the Hrabchak number as well. People can debate. I mean, certainly $12 million for Kyle Connor is market value. But again, there are a lot of teams. Like, you don't think Detroit would kill to have a guy like Kyle Connor on it? It might be able to do that. So I just wonder how long things can go. And again, this is a much bigger picture conversation, maybe more for the offseason. And the pressure on the start in the first 30 to 40 games of next season, as opposed to at what point things change. I mean, maybe you have a great offseason. Maybe it's the opposite of last offseason, and the guys you bring in actually really help out. The team wins tons of games, and everyone's happy. But I think you need to be prepared for those other scenarios, which I'm sure they have discussed. And ironically, a lot of that could have a lot to do with these next 6 games, what happens in the draft lottery, assuming they're not in the playoffs, and whether they are just a mushy middle team or whether they do get a little bit of luck, move up to the top, or at least finish in that sort of bottom 6, 7, where you're getting a player that can come in. And listen, it's not unusual to see guys at 6 or 7 perform far better than the guys in the 2 or 3 hole, but at least you're getting a selection from that high-end tier of players that, frankly, the Jets have been missing and haven't had a piece of since they picked Laine.
Well, and we know the circumstances behind Mark Scheifele and Connor Hrabchak's signing extensions, right? Like, this was 2 guys that re-signed with Winnipeg on long-term deals to retire as Jets potentially, but because they believed, or they were told, that they were going to be Stanley Cup contenders, that the organization would spend to the cap. Like, they said this. Kevin Cheveldayoff in his presser mentioned how he wanted to give guys like Connor Hrabchak and Mark Scheifele more say in the organization, right? This was their second big contract. They're older in the league. He wanted to have more influence in the locker room, right? So, and I imagine those similar conversations existed with Kyle Connor when he signed his $12 million, sheet per year. So, like, if you start getting into years where you're not spending to the cap, because here's the thing, man, the cap is going to be the rise of the cap is going to be a very daunting thing for Canadian teams, particularly here in Winnipeg with such a small arena. So like the days of the Jets spending to the cap, I would argue are over. So spending to the cap's probably not going to happen. And then it's a matter of like, okay, well, if you're not in the Stanley Cup conversation, then like it goes back to our earlier conversation about like, then you start thinking if this is the long-term future for you, which is a nice transition to Josh Morrissey, to your point. I want to make it clear here, Josh, there's a chance that Josh Morrissey in 2 years or a year decides to sign a big extension, loves Winnipeg, and it's all whatever. It's history from there. But if the Jets continue to dip here over the next couple of years, including this season, then you start asking yourself the question, it's not like, do I love Winnipeg? Do I love my teammates? You start asking yourself the question, is someone in their early to, closer to mid 30s about whether I'm going to win a Stanley Cup? How important is it to win a Stanley Cup? We know how important it is for players to win a Stanley Cup. And if the team you're currently on isn't trending in that direction, or even worse, is starting to tear down or make trades, I think it would make a lot of sense for him not to re-sign, like anybody, right? So I think that's something they're staring at. But and that's why I think it's almost obvious, Huss, and I don't necessarily disagree with it per se. I mean, I just don't envision a complete teardown with this team and trading, marquee players for whatever. And I don't even know if there's an appetite in Winnipeg to do that. But and all that said, I think next year you have to go with the promises you've been giving your leaders in your core group, and you have to treat next year like it's your chance to make the playoffs for those players, right? Because you're managing all these different expectations, and the fact of the matter is, I don't want to say the least of which is the fans, because you do need to be cautious of fan, caring about results and buying tickets and all those things. I don't want to make it sound like I'm not thinking that's a big thing. That's a massive thing. But it's another ball you need to juggle. It's like telling your players one thing, trying to trying to make everybody happy, whether you run a sport organization, a hockey team, or anything else in this world, is difficult to do. And you have to navigate through all these different challenges and hurdles to appease different sectors of stakeholders within your organization. And obviously a big part of that is the players. And again, it's going to result in, what's the off season is going to look like? What is the potential for this management to improve this team, right? What are the ways teams can improve through trades, through drafting, through signing free agents? And again, we seem to have this belief that we say over and over that Winnipeg doesn't have two of those. They can't sign free agents and they can't make, crazy trades. We've obviously seen some trades here. Draft and develop is going to be super important. And that's the part that I feel is missing in all this, right? Like the Jets haven't hit on really anybody, right? Like you have Cole Perfetti, the guy who's the youngest guy at 25, turning 26 or whatever, just turned 20, whatever it is. He's the youngest player, and it's like he's had, you could write a book about his challenges to get to where he is right now. So it's like, where's the draft? Like, where's this team, is running out of players and is running out of time with, players getting older. They need to fill some of those cupboards. And judging by what we see on the Moose, and maybe there are a couple guys on, Colby Barlow's or Brandon Yeagers that are, maybe a couple years away and will be good players, but they're certainly not the bet that you see in other organizations. And I think that's the problem here. I think it does start with drafting and developing, and particularly drafting better.
Listen, that is an entire other conversation that we are going to have, and we'll probably have immediately once we know exactly what's happening with this season, because you're exactly right. I mean, this team is not changing it all, becoming like a big free agency team. If they want to be successful, they really need to do what they did originally, and that's hit on a whole bunch of their picks, develop them well. And you can argue whether the picks weren't good or the development with the Moose hasn't been good. But with the exception of Elias Salmonson, who I think has a very bright, long NHL career ahead of him, and he will be a Jet, and he's been a godsend to the blue line this year. You mentioned Barlow, you mentioned Yeager. I mean, none of these guys, in fact, they've had very concerning first years in the American Hockey League. There's no way around it. I mean, when you talk about single digits in goals for a guy like Barlow that, put up the numbers that he did in the Ontario Hockey League, You worry that maybe this was a guy that just matured really early, that looked really good, and now his other players are catching up with him, not an NHL player. He will be the judge, or will be the judge of that based on what happens in the future. But all of that'll be good. Hammer, get your reps in. I'll see you Wednesday, 8:00, as we do it again over at CoolBet for a little poker night. Should be a lot of fun. Thanks for doing this as always.
Yeah, always a pleasure, my friend, chopping it up. Interesting for us to chat about stuff, and that's the beauty of it. So let's decide to enjoy this last stretch here. You know what? I know there's guys and gals out there that don't want to make the playoffs. I'm on that side. April, as short as it might be, and maybe it will, maybe not. Who knows? So maybe this is the year us where everything that should go wrong goes wrong and goes right in the playoffs. Where everything in previous years everything seems to have gone right in the regular season is kind of fallen short in the playoffs. So who knows?
We could use something to go right, and if that ends up being the draft lottery, so be it. But we'll see what happens tonight, 6:30 against the Kraken. We'll see you Wednesday for CoolBet Poker, 8 p.m. on that. Speaking of these last few games, this is the third last Jet home game of the season. But Saturday night is our final WST game of the month, and this should be a beauty. I mean, regardless of, frankly, of what happens in these next couple of games, the Philadelphia Flyers are coming in on an absolute heater. They're in the playoffs right now, which is just incredible. Why don't you join us if you haven't? I'd love to see some of you regulars. If you haven't made it out to a game before and you're planning on doing it before the end of the season, go to winnipegjets.com/WST. Grab a ticket. It includes a beverage, and we will see you on Saturday down at Canada Life Center. All right, Jake Bowen-Moss is ready to go. We're going to get to the national championship game and this Jays-Dodgers series. We'll do that coming up in just a second on WST. WST would like to thank our friends at Cleanline Plumbing, Heating, and Electrical for their support of Winnipeg Sports Talk throughout the Jet season. When we're doing the Winnipeg Jet lines, we do it with the gang at Cleanline, who are the leaders in Winnipeg residential and commercial plumbing, heating, and electrical services. Your one-stop shop with over 40 years of experience. And like the captain, Adam Lowry, has the back of his teammates, Cleanline has yours with 24/7 emergency services. So when you're in a jam at any time of the day, Cleanline has you covered. 204-500-2001 is the number. Write that one down, 204-500-2001 for 24/7 emergency services from the official plumbing service of the Winnipeg Jets. You can find out more online at cleanline.ca. Well, it's time to get ready for spring with our friends at Royal Sports, Winnipeg's sports superstore, family-owned and operated for over 50 years. And as we get the snow out of here, it is time to get back on the pitch. Royal is the soccer headquarters in town with more boots than you've ever seen. Not to mention great soccer merch from teams and nations around the world. Of course, we got baseball and slow pitch season coming up. They'll get you ready with gloves, bats, everything you need to dominate on it. Of course, they've still got hockey gear, snowboarding gear for those of you making the trip out for spring break, and the best selection of licensed merchandise for fans of the NHL, National Football League, NBA, and of course, Major League Baseball with Blue Jays season just around the corner. Royal Sports, 750 Pembina Highway. You got to see it to believe it. Get down there today and make sure to follow them on Instagram at Royal Sports Winnipeg for the latest merchandise drops and sale information. We still do have plenty of games to get to for the Winnipeg Jets season, and with many on the road, no better place to get together with your gang to watch the squad than your local Boston Pizza. Ice-cold schooners, world-famous BP wings, gourmet pizzas, and of course, Winnipeg Jets pick-a-player contest where you can win great prizes from BP every time the Winnipeg Jets score. So for the next game or the big game on the TV, head on down to Boston Pizza at your local BP location. Buckle up, and of course, if you are staying at home, you can get the great taste of Boston Pizza by ordering online at bostonpizza.com. All right, much more to come on WST, but first, a big shout out to our friends at Winnipeg's favorite local brewery, Little Brown Jug.
You train day in and day out, learning new techniques, approaching new concepts, and living out the thrill of achieving your goals. Building a craft beer is no different. While you spend your hours on the ice, we spend ours here, brewing our trademark beer. Again, again, and again. Here's to pushing the status quo and challenging ourselves to build something memorable. 1919 by Little Brown Jug.
All right, we got a big week with the boys at Coolbet. Tomorrow morning, we are going to get into the lab and bang out our Masters preview, picks, best bets, and all that. We'll have that for you right after WST tomorrow, so stick around for some extended content. And, of course, tonight is the NCAA National Championship game, which I know Jake's all over. Let's bring in Jake Bowen-Moss from Coolbet right now. What's going on? How was the long weekend?
Long weekend was nice, Nice to get the extra day and, spend some time with family. Didn't get too crazy or anything like that. Ready to go for the Natty tonight. Ready to go for this Dodgers series. I know there's plenty to touch on. The Masters this week. It's a busy one, man. It never ends with the sports calendar. You think you get a break, and then all of a sudden the Masters punches you right across the face, and you're absolutely into it. So, I'm fired up, as you can tell, and looking forward to a big, big week ahead.
Yeah, well, listen, I mean, Masters Week usually does not come with, I can still see the freaking skating trail on the river. I mean, the ice isn't even gone right now. So we're weather challenged right now. And obviously going through the final games of the season, trying to see what's happening with our Jets here. I will say this just on the Masters, everybody, that the odds are up right now. There's been a bit of a Monday reset. Scotty Scheffler, the favorite, plus 550. You got Bryson DeChambeau and John Rahm at 10-1. Rory, the defending champ, at 12. Ludwig Obergo. I see Xander Schauffele's dropped from 16 to 14. Cam Young at 18. And then 20 on Fitz and Fleetwood. And Bobby Mack, who had a nice week at the Valero at 28-1. But we'll save the Masters chat for tomorrow. We'll dive into all of our favorites right after the program. So stick around for that. As far as the national championship game, this is something that I'm as casual as it comes. If I wasn't at a hockey game tonight, I'm sure I'd tune in outside of that Buffalo-Tampa game. That's going to be quite exciting. But tee up the championship. Connecticut beats UConn. We knew that the winner of that game, Connecticut beats Illinois. We knew that winner of that game would be the underdog because, of course, it was the battle of the two favorites, Michigan and Arizona. Arizona seemingly had no shot. I mean, can UConn pull off a miracle, or is this another natty in a different sport for the Michigan Wolverines?
Yeah, I mean, listen, you cannot count out UConn. The pedigree that this team has over the last, 4 years in this tournament. You think about the last 4 years, and UConn went back to back, a few years ago. I was in the building for their first championship, and they rolled through everybody that year. The following year, kind of the same deal. You just couldn't take them down. Last year, they lost to who ended up being the national championship Florida Gators. So, you think about that. Florida, a really good team. And this year, who they knocked off? Duke, Illinois, a team who was as hot as ever, really just held them off. Like, they knocked off Michigan State. They knocked off some really, really good teams on their way to the national championship here. So, as much as the spread might indicate it's going to be, Michigan by a couple possessions, I would not count out UConn. Now, on the other side, Michigan, they've been unbelievable this year. And that win against Arizona really, had people really impressed because Arizona, up to that point, had been rolling teams. They beat Purdue pretty bad the game before. They beat Arkansas, my Razorbacks, by a whole ton of points. And it really felt like they couldn't be stopped. And Michigan really just the pace that they play at, the ability they have. Their best player, Yaxel Lindenborg, went down. They just didn't miss a beat. They just rolled through Arizona. So, yeah, I mean, there's absolutely a world where Michigan rolls this. That's what I'm rooting for. I don't know if Patty and I have mentioned this 800 times on this program. We both are sitting with the Michigan future in our pocket. I think Patty's got like 15-1 or 12-1. I got a 10-1 ticket from earlier in the season. So, we were just texting about it offline, just saying, I think it's just let it ride and hope for the best. I think Patty can win the pool tonight with the Michigan dub for WS tiers. I think I'm up there as well in the top 5. So a lot riding on Michigan tonight. That's what I'm rooting for, but I am absolutely not counting out the UConn Huskies and Dan Hurley.
Yeah, you know what? I should pull up the men's tournament challenge right now. And needless to say, I am out of it. I had Arizona. But yes, going into tonight, P. Greggy is in first place. He's got a 90-point lead on E. Herbo, who's got UConn. So if Michigan wins, Pat is the big winner. Can't wait for him tomorrow doing his victory lap as we but that'll be nice for him. Getting a little boost to the account right before we make our Masters bets. How about that? But yeah, P. Greggy and E. Herbo, it's going to come down. You had a real nice run, though, too. You're right there in fourth, but a lot of Michigan spots. Well, yeah. I won't jump on UConn then again. I will ride with the Michigan Wolverines tonight. And in the national championship game, we didn't talk a lot of Jays earlier, probably just because of what a brutal week it was for the team. Hard to wrap your head around losing 5 of 6 to the Rockies and the White Sox. But Jake, you'll have great weeks. You'll have ugly weeks over the course of the season. What's most concerning is just how many guys are getting hurt. I mean, adding Kirk to that mix with a fractured thumb, it just seems when it rains, it pours right now. And, look who's coming to town to start a 3-game series tonight if it isn't the defending World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers.
Yeah, I mean, listen, that's not an ideal start. I've been live tweeting some of these awful games that we've been watching. And, it's really it's so early in the season, too. Like, I don't want to be the over-exaggerate guy, but it's hard, right? When you're watching these games and they're not taking advantage of opportunities like they did last year. Like last year, every single time they would threaten, they'd find a way to at least get 1 or 2 across. And they actually did that earlier in the season. You look back at that one Athletics game and they gave up a bunch of runs and it was like 7-2 or 7-3, kind of worked their way back. Kirky had a solo home run in the bottom of the 9th. And then they went on to win that one in extras. You thought it's just they were going to keep that same mojo, the same juju. Then you lose 2 or 3 to the Rockies and you're kind of like, whoa, that was a weird situation, but, we'll bounce back. You win against the White Sox. Well, then you get swept by the White Sox. And now it's a really ugly situation with the Dodgers coming to town. And, you're not playing your best baseball. The Dodgers, I think they're 7-2 to start the season. They're making their comebacks. Last night, I think they were down 6-1 to the Nationals, and they came all the way back, won that one 8-6. So, yeah, definitely a scary team to see coming in. Mookie Betts isn't going to play. He's on the shelf for a couple weeks. But the injuries, like you mentioned, Huss, yeah, we can get into them. You start the season, Savage, Bieber, and Berrios are all on the IL to start the season. Santander, I think he'll just be an IL guy forever with this organization. I don't know if he's ever going to have a healthy season the way it feels right now. And Cody Ponce goes to the IL with the injury. He's going to be out a while. They just moved him to the 60-day. Kirk's on the 10-day. Barger gets hurt, last game. We'll see what his status is. He hasn't moved to any injured list or anything like that. Lefty on the mound today, so he get in unless we see a bullpen. I don't know. You hope they get up for the Dodgers right after what happened last year. A lot of people saying the Jays were the better team in that series. Well, frankly, they just didn't get the job done. Can they respond after, like I said in an earlier tweet today, a lackluster start to the season, win this series against the Dodgers, and then really start to ramp up? Luckily for them, the AL East has been not that impressive. The Yankees have been good. Outside of that, the Rays, the Orioles, and the Red Sox have been off to rough starts as well. So it's not like anything's out of reach right now. We're 9 games into a 162-game season. I think everyone needs to take a deep breath and focus on the positive this week. I'm going to get out to a game tomorrow, Huss. Looney Dogs with Yamamoto versus Gosman on the mound. I'm fired up.
That's going to be amazing. Credit to you for having the stones to go back into that building and watch Yamamoto again after what we saw last year in the World Series. I'm still haunted by that one. But when you take a look, kind of a big slate for a Monday in the majors. The big game that we'll all be focused in on, 6:07 start, Dodgers and Jays. Jays plus 120 on the money line and the Dodgers plus 147. Justin Robleski going up against Mad Max tonight. So, listen, you got to flush it the last two series, really. And, this team they'll be ready to get up, and certainly not getting one of the top pitchers to start it off. So hopefully they can get off to a good start. Now, Jake, you had asked me to put together a WST for tonight's Jets game. And because of the uncertainty of this team winning, losing, what's best for us right now, I'm not going to take a side on this one. But here's my angle for tonight's game. Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele seem like they've been within 2 goals of each other basically all season long. And it's like when one guy does one thing, then the other guy does it. Well, Kyle Connor's had a monster week. He just had 2 goals in the Columbus game. So I'm actually going with a Mark Scheifele goal today, a Kyle Connor assist, and then we're going to take Macklin Celebrini over 1.5 points. So this is going to be a little prop offering for tonight. And if we can get through this early game with the Jets and Kraken with the Scheifele goal and a Connor assist, we'll be checking in on the Sharks, who are taking on the Blackhawks coming up at 9 p.m. tonight. So if you can, fire that one up in the exclusives. I know Evdog will take care of the people. Scheifele goal, Connor assist, Celebrini over 1.5 points for tonight's NHL slate.
Okay, so Celebrini 2+ points on top of that. All right, that's fun. That's fun, Hustle. Something a little bit different. And I think we'll probably, just because of the Scheifele goal and the Connor assist there, you get a bit of correlation. We'll probably do exclusives for that one just to keep it simple.
We will do that. By the way, the Super Boost for the Masters is up, and it's a beauty. Xander Schauffele with Pat Mayo, great number on that. And Pat's got 2. Si Woo, Harris English, Jordan Spieth, Akshay Bhatia, all to make the cut at the Masters. Those are up right now in the exclusives as well, which is where our WST parlay for tonight. Scheifele goal, Connor assist, Celebrini over 1.5 points. Jake, get in the lab. Get your best picks for tomorrow's Masters show. We will look forward to seeing you then. And again, a reminder to everybody, if you want to play poker with us, Wednesday night, 8 p.m., myself and Jeff Hamilton, $100 bounties on our heads. Hope to see you there. Have a good one. Enjoy the games tonight, Jake, and we'll talk to you tomorrow as we get ready for Augusta.
Yeah, one last thing on the Masters House. We also got a boost up in the combo cards. We're going to do daily boosts for the Masters, kind of like we did for the Super Bowl and kind of like we did for March Madness. So today's daily boost, the 2 Reeds. We got Terrace Reed of the Yukon Huskies over 14.5 points and Patrick Reed in the top 20. That's boosted up over plus 350 in the combos. Tomorrow we'll run something back, probably something a little more simple like Rory and Scheffler to be top 10 or something like that.
Beauty, Jake. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks, us.
All right, there's our guy JBM. Jays Dodgers tonight coming up. All right. Hey, speaking of golf, let's give some thanks to our friends at Breezy Bend and Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge. We'll come back, hook up with Connor, and wrap the show and get you ready for puck drop tonight. Do want to thank our friends at Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge for their great support of WST. Of course, if you were thinking of a incredible fly-in fishing experience where you can be on the water in less than 2 hours from the city of Winnipeg, Aikens Lake is the spot. And as incredible as the world-class fishing is, the scenes and the hospitality at Aikens Lake might even top that. Check out aikenslake.com for availability and options remaining for the 2026 fishing season. And make sure to tell Pitt when you're talking to him that the boys at WST sent you. And it is great to have our pals at Breezy Bend back. We got snow on the ground. It is not entirely, we're not ready to swing them just yet, but we will be, folks, very, very soon. And if you're looking for a long-term home at one of Winnipeg's top private courses, Breezy Bend Country Club is the spot. Beautiful course, incredible clubhouse renovations, course renovations over the last 10 years. Of course, they hosted the Manitoba Open, And for my money, the best greenskeeping crew and maintenance crew in the province. They're getting us ready for the upcoming season. We will see all of you out at Breezy Bend coming up this year, hosting the senior as well, which should be a big event a little bit later on. breezybend.ca for more information on that. All right. Yeah, you can hit them up, breezybend.ca, or give them a call, 895-7205. Holler at our pal Corey Johnson. All right, let's get Connor back in here. Connor, what do you think about the special tonight we're going to do? Scheifele goal. It's been all Connor lately. Kind of time for Scheifele. It seems like it's one or the other with these guys. Connor an assist. And 2 more points for the Wonder Kid in San Jose.
Yeah, Celebrini, I know, like, home game against the Hawks. Like him to have multiple points. He's got 100. He's a teenager. He's got the energy. They're going to be playing him a ton. And yeah, this Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele thing, they've been battling for first in the team in goals really all year long. Right now, it's Kyle Connor with the lead at 36, Mark Scheifele at 34 goals. And I agree with you, Huss. Seems like one guy gets hot and is setting up the other one, and then another guy gets hot and is setting up the other one. So I like that's sharp. That's sharp. Going back to Mark Scheifele tonight, I think that's a good play.
We're going back to Scheifele. You know, you mentioned how they kind of do it. What's Scheifele over 2 tonight? Plus 720 for 2 goals for Scheif, if you want to get a little aggressive. But we'll go with 1 with the Connor assist and the Macklin Celebrini on as well. Listen, Adam, if you could get that last clip from Arnie up here for a minute, because just to finish up the program, Connor, wanted to talk about a couple of broadcasting legends that announced their retirements on the weekend. Vic Rauter calling his final match, and unfortunately, he said make the final in favor of Sweden, who beat Canada in the gold medal final at the Worlds. But congratulations to Matty Dunstone, Colton Lawton. There's the Harden boys on just an amazing year. And a great World Championships despite the loss in the finals. Silver still nothing to sneeze at. So we got our last dose of Vic Rauter. And then I think a lot of people caught a little off guard by the news at the end of After Hours on Saturday that Scott Oake, who's called Winnipeg home for over 4 decades, a broadcasting legend in these parts, and a guy that has really made such a unique part of NHL broadcasting for Canadians his own for so many years, calling it quits at the end of the playoffs.
Yeah, Scott Oake, that was surprising to me. And he's someone who has grown up. I've seen him on my TV my whole life when it comes to hockey broadcasts and all of that stuff. And these past couple of years with the After Hours content, it's truly some of the best like one-on-one interviewing content out there in sports, period, let alone hockey. But like the John Cooper one recently was just so good, and just the humility to which he approaches these interviews and the preparation that he does. Like, it's just they get such great response and they command such respect in that after hours setting. And it just goes to show the type of person that Scott Oake is. And that is an absolute legend that is going to be retiring. And it sucks because he's one of my favorites. And the after hours stuff recently, especially, has been so much fun, and appointment viewing for me every single Saturday when there's a hockey night in Canada. So that was unfortunate to hear, but what a legend, what a career. Congrats to him on, I think it was over 40 years in the industry, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, no, and he's been here, I mean, basically the majority of my life. He's been a mainstay on the tube, doing CBC Sports here and then all across the world, and now with his home. But congratulations to Scott, both for an amazing career, the amazing work that he's done here in Winnipeg with the Bruce Oak Center. And, it came up today. Here is Scott Arneal, who was just asked to reflect on Scott Oake's contributions for a guy that has been here in Winnipeg for a good portion of Scott's career.
Yeah, we go back all the way 81, 82 in those era. My neighbor didn't live too far away from me. Used to see him then walking down the road, and he's been around. He's one of those voices, one of those guys that you talk about Hockey Night in Canada, you talk about turning games on, and you see familiar faces. He's been one that's an awful lot of people have been able to recognize, and obviously with his with his son, with what happened with all of that, having the being able to be a part of, help him along with that, and just recognize the work that he's put in and the awareness for mental health, all those things. It's just been, he's been through some tough times, and it's amazing he always weathered it, and he's a true professional, and it's tough to see him go.
All right, so there was a little bit of Scott Arneal on Scott Oak, and again, I was texting with Rick Ralph on the weekend about Vic. Vic Rauter would come on. Those two worked together briefly in Toronto for a while, and Vic would come on with Rick, and their conversations were so funny. I mean, he was one of the perfect guys, which was right in Rick's wheelhouse of some sort of quirky stuff. We talked about the 4 flat Cokes that he would bring with himself for for his broadcasting career. But the funniest thing, if you saw the highlights of Vic Rauter on the weekend, that thing that James Duthie put together, which was like the gospel choir, and they got Vic to be like the lead singer of it. Absolutely hilarious stuff. But the curling world will definitely miss Vic. He's truly been the voice of curling in this country for the last couple of decades. Speaking of curling, tonight, very intrigued. I'm not going to be able to watch this live, but tonight's the debut of the Rock League, which is this new curling entity. It's going to be teams that'll be playing against. You'll have men's 4s, women's 4s, and a mixed match all at the same time. Can't wait to see what that looks like. And going to try and grab our pal John Cullen tomorrow, who's doing the commentary for this. You can see it all at rockleague.com to find out more about it. And obviously we'll get his thoughts on the World Championships as well. But a big day tomorrow on WST. We'll be breaking down tonight's game. Mike McIntyre will join the program. We will also have our Masters picks and preview immediately following WST tomorrow. And look ahead to the Jets in St. Louis, as well as everything that's happening around in this crazy playoff race. Quieter in the East tonight. Tomorrow, the East takes over. But tonight, it's the Jets, the Kraken, the Sharks, and, of course, that head-to-head matchup between LA and Nashville, which if you want to lock that one in for a 3-point game. Like, they should just start the game in overtime. Save everyone the problem. Would not at all be surprised if that happens. But Connor, great stuff. Going to be a very fun week with you. Have a good one tonight. We'll see you maybe down at the rink. And if not, we'll see you tomorrow right here on WST.
Yeah, enjoy the game. You as well from the seats. Hope everyone in chat enjoys the game tonight as well. And hopefully our Blue Jays, if you're a Blue Jays fan, get back on track here. I getting swept by the White Sox and then seeing the Dodgers next on the schedule. Not a great spot to be in. But I'll be like Jake, and I'll focus on the positives a little bit more here. And hopefully they can get back in the win column tonight.
It must be the first 2 weeks of the season, because that is decidedly not a normal Jake take to just focus on the positive. But I respect it. I'm with him. And going to be a fun one tonight. We got Jays, you got Rock League, you got the National Championship, and of course, Amazon Prime Video, 6:30 p.m. is where you're going to find the Jets playing to keep their playoff hopes alive against the Seattle Kraken. Thanks to Adnan Verk, speaking of Prime Video. Thanks to Jeff Hamilton, of course, Connor Hrabchak, Jake Bowen-Moss, everyone listening on the podcast, all of you for hanging out with us live on YouTube. A big thanks to all the sponsors that make WST happen each and every day. And, of course, Adam Smithsuk getting us on and off the air today. That's going to do it for us. For Connor Hrabchak, I'm Andrew Paterson. Enjoy the game tonight. Make sure to join us. Busy day tomorrow on WST. We'll see you at 1.
Oh, my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.